Most people studying for IELTS speaking are wasting their time. Not because they are lazy, not because they are stupid, but because the advice they are following is flat out wrong. Things like memorize these 7 magic words and you will get a band 7. Or never say wanna or gonna in your speaking test. Or use this one trick that examiners do not want you to know. That kind of content is everywhere. And I am telling you right now, if you follow it, you are more likely to go down a band than up. I have seen it happen too many times. Students who are genuinely at a band 7 level walking out of the test room with a 6 because they were focused on the wrong things. That stops today. What I am going to give you in this video are 20 real, reliable, honest tips that actually work. No gimmicks, no promises, no magic. Just solid advice built from over 20 years working in international education and more than 40,000 students who have used my methods to get the score they needed. We are going to go through mindset, part 1, part 2, and part 3. And at the end, I am going to share something about learning English that most teachers will never tell you. Stay with me, because every single minute of this video is worth your time. Let us start with something most people overlook completely: your mindset. The way you are thinking before and during the test has a massive impact on your score. This is not motivational talk. This is practical reality. Here is the first thing I want you to do. Enjoy the test. I know, it sounds crazy, but hear me out. One of the biggest reasons students underperform is nerves. Pure and simple. I have watched students who are comfortably at a band 7 level freeze up, stumble, lose their words, and walk out with a 6 because anxiety took over. The fix is not to pretend the nerves are not there. The fix is to change the story in your head. Instead of walking into that room thinking this is terrifying, I do not want to be here, train yourself to think I am going to enjoy this no matter what happens. That shift in thinking creates a sense of calm, and calm is what lets your real ability come through. The second mindset tip is simple but powerful. Smile. Not a big fake grin, not an uncomfortable performance smile, just a quiet, gentle smile to yourself right before you walk in, and keep that soft energy throughout the test. This does 2 things. It relaxes your body, which relaxes your voice and your thinking, and it creates a positive first impression on the examiner. Examiners are human beings. They respond to energy just like anyone else. Walk in with a relaxed, warm presence, and the whole room feels different. Third, keep it simple at the start. This is something a lot of students get wrong. They come in wanting to impress immediately and they launch into complex phrases or unusual vocabulary right from the first question. But the first couple of minutes of the test are your warm-up time. Think of it like a marathon. You do not sprint at the start of a marathon. You ease in. You let your body find its rhythm. The same is true for speaking. Use the first few exchanges to settle into the room, get comfortable with the examiner's voice, and just warm up. Simple, clear answers at the start are better than complicated answers that fall apart. Fourth, be natural. This is a big one. A lot of students shift into what I call robot mode the moment the test starts. They start speaking in this stiff, formal, rehearsed way that sounds nothing like how they actually talk. The examiner is not looking for a performance. They are looking for natural spoken English. Imagine you are talking to a colleague or a friend. Let your real voice come through. That naturalness is not a weakness. It is actually one of the things that pushes you toward a higher band. Now, let us get into part 1. I'm going to give you 5 tips here, and I will show you exactly how they work in real answers. The first tip is to use connectors. Connectors are the small words and phrases that link your ideas together and make your speech flow. Things like on top of that, to my mind, that said, what is more, mind you. These are not fancy or academic. They are natural, everyday spoken English. And they do something important. They show the examiner that your ideas are connected and logical. That is part of what IELTS calls coherence. which is a key part of the fluency score. So if someone asks you something like, do you think it is important for friends to laugh together instead of just giving a flat answer, you might say something like, to my mind, it is extremely important because it helps us relax and unwind. And on top of that, I just think laughing is one of the best ways to stay positive. See how that flows. See how two connectors make the answer feel structured without being stiff. That is what you are going for. Second tip for part 1. Use some complex grammar. Now do not panic. I am not saying you need to sound like an academic paper, but to push toward a band 7, you do need to show a range of grammatical structures. One of the easiest ways to do this in part 1 is to use the present perfect continuous. This is the tense we use to talk about something that started in the past and is still happening now. I have been living in Spain for 2 years. I've been reading a lot of history books lately. It is simple, but it immediately adds a layer of grammatical sophistication to your answer. So instead of saying I live in Spain, which is fine but basic, you say I have been living here for about 2 years now. Tiny change, big impact. Practice dropping this tense into your part 1 answers and watch how much more interesting your grammar sounds. Third, use idiomatic expressions. Now, before you go off and memorize lists of weird idioms, let me be clear about what this actually means. Idiomatic language includes phrasal verbs, common expressions, and yes, some idioms. The key point is that idiomatic language is natural. It is what real speakers of English actually say. Chill out instead of relax. Pull in a crowd instead of attract visitors. Second to none instead of the best. You do not need to use these constantly. In fact, using too many sounds unnatural and forced. What you want is to sprinkle 1 or 2 into your answers throughout part 1 so that the examiner has a couple of moments where they think, oh nice, that is the goal. A couple of moments that leave a positive impression. The fourth tip is about synonyms and antonyms. If you keep saying the same words over and over, your vocabulary range sounds limited. And vocabulary range is something the examiner is specifically listening for. So instead of saying, I like reading 3 times, try mixing in, I am fond of reading, I am really into history books, or I am a bit of a bookworm. Instead of saying something is really good again and again, try outstanding, out of this world, a cut above the rest. None of these are extreme or unnatural. They are just more interesting, and they show the examiner that your vocabulary has range and flexibility, which is exactly what you need to push into the higher bands. Fifth tip for part 1. Use adverbs. This one is massively underused by IELTS students, and I genuinely cannot understand why, because adverbs are so easy and so effective. Words like completely, totally, absolutely, extremely, rarely, barely, fairly, somewhat. Native English speakers use these constantly, and they make your language sound natural and alive. If you went to an art gallery and you were blown away by it, do not just say it was very good. Say I was completely bowled over. The paintings were totally out of this world. I was absolutely stunned by the whole experience. Adverbs like completely and totally are doing real work there. They are intensifying your language and making it vivid. Start paying attention to how often you use adverbs and try to increase it gradually. Now let us move into part 2, which is a different beast entirely. In part 2, you have 1 minute of preparation time, and then you need to speak for 1 to 2 minutes on a topic. Here are 6 tips to help you do that well. First, plan a clear structure in your preparation minute. When the examiner gives you the task card, your first instinct might be to think of the perfect topic or story. Stop doing that. Instead, pick one idea quickly, anything that is good enough, and spend the rest of that minute planning your structure. Write down keywords, not full sentences, not full thoughts, just a few words that will remind you what you want to say next. Think of it like a roadmap. Politicians giving speeches use notes. Athletes have game plans. You need a roadmap so you do not get lost halfway through your answer and end up going in circles. The bullet points on the task card will help guide you, but add your own keywords on top. Keep this in front of you while you speak and use it. Second tip for part 2. Be direct from the start. Some students open their part 2 answer with a kind of lecture or introduction about the topic in general. They say something like, "Intelligence is a fascinating quality that exists in many forms." No, stop. Get to the point immediately. Tell the examiner who or what you are going to talk about right away. The person I am going to describe is my father. The place I want to tell you about is none other than my hometown. That phrase "none other than" is a great little idiom you can use here. It suggests a slight surprise or drama around the person or place you are introducing, but whether you use it or not, the key is to be direct. Do not ramble. Do not give introductions. Just get in there. Third tip, use a range of tenses. Part 2 gives you a great opportunity to show the examiner that you can use multiple tenses naturally. You might start by setting the scene in the past, then describe actions in the past, simple, and then talk about how you feel now or what the future holds. But here is a special technique that really works well for storytelling. Try switching from the past tense to the present tense mid-story. For example, you might say, "It happened about 2 months ago. I was sitting in a coffee shop waiting for a friend. Then this woman comes in and starts talking really loudly on her phone. She sits right next to me and the noise is unbearable. So I asked her politely to keep it down." Notice what just happened. The setting was in the past, but then the actions switched to the present simple. She comes in, she sits down. The noise is unbearable. This technique makes your story feel vivid and alive, like it is happening right now in front of the listener. It is a classic storytelling device, and it is incredibly powerful. Practice it, use it carefully, and only use it once you feel confident, because if you try it without practicing, it can make your grammar feel inconsistent. Fourth tip for part 2. Use flexible templates. A template is a phrase where you change 1 or 2 words each time you use it. Unlike fixed idioms that you memorize word for word, templates are adaptable, and that makes them much more useful. For example, I would like to kick off by telling you what happened. Or this took place about 2 months ago. Or it is one of the most beautiful places I have ever visited. These phrases can be used in almost any topic. They slot in naturally, they show a good range of language, and because you are changing part of them each time, they never sound memorized or robotic. Build a small collection of these flexible templates and practice using them until they feel second nature. Fifth tip, use cohesive devices throughout your answer. Cohesive devices are the words and phrases that glue your ideas together and make your speech easy to follow. First of all, after that, moving on, when it comes to my feelings, as far as my emotions were concerned. These might sound small, but they are doing important structural work. They guide the listener through your answer. They signal what is coming next. And they are one of the things the examiner is specifically listening for under the fluency score. Without cohesive devices, even a fluent speaker can sound jumbled. With them, even an average speaker sounds organized and confident. Sixth tip, and this one is possibly the most important of all for part 2, get into the flow. All the tips above are useful, but sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is forget about all of them and just speak. If you have been practicing regularly, if you know your topic well, if you feel comfortable, there will be moments when the language just starts flowing naturally. Let it. Do not interrupt your own flow to think about whether you should be using a cohesive device right now. Creativity and naturalness are genuinely valuable in this test. The examiner wants to hear real English, not a carefully constructed performance. If you can get into a flow where you are telling a story, painting a picture, expressing real ideas, that is when your best language comes out. That is when the examiner really notices you. Aim for that. Now, part 3. This is where many students feel the most pressure because the questions are abstract, unpredictable, and demand real opinions and ideas. Here are 5 tips for part 3. First, ask for clarification if you need it. If the examiner asks you something and your mind goes blank, or you genuinely do not understand the question, just ask them to repeat it or rephrase it. Could you say that again, please? Can you explain what you mean by that? These are completely natural things to say. Real conversations work this way. Asking for clarification is not a sign of weakness. It gives you a few extra seconds to think and make sure you are actually answering the right question. On top of that, use the pause. The pause is different from hesitation. Hesitation sounds like, the pause sounds like, well, I think that is a good question. The pause is controlled and confident. Hesitation is not. Practice pausing deliberately before you answer. Use a natural filler or signpost, like in my view, I suppose you could say, or for starters, and then get into your answer. You can also buy time by repeating part of the question back in your own words. How has globalization affected the food industry? Well, the effect of globalization on food is something I think about quite a bit, actually. There. You bought yourself 3 seconds and you started speaking. That is the technique. Second tip for part 3, generate ideas before your test, not during it. One of the most common problems students have in part 3 is that they simply cannot think of anything to say. Now, there are 2 reasons this happens. Either they genuinely have no ideas on the topic, or they do have ideas, but they cannot get them out quickly enough under pressure. For the first problem, the solution is simple. Go and find ideas before your test. Use BBC News, BBC, Learning English, TED Ed, or Wikipedia as starting points. Research the topics that commonly come up in IELTS, Part 3. Read about them. Note down key arguments, examples, and vocabulary. Do this systematically in the weeks before your test, and you will walk in with a mental library of ideas you can draw from. For the second problem, where ideas exist but will not come out fast enough, you need to practice thinking on your feet. Do mock speaking tests with time pressure. Record yourself. Simulate the real test conditions at home. The more you practice generating and expressing ideas under pressure, the faster and more naturally it will happen in the real test. Third tip for part 3. Manage your nerves and accept your mistakes. If you are an introvert, if you are nervous, if you are afraid of making errors, first of all, you are not alone. A huge number of intelligent, hardworking students struggle with exactly this. And here is what I want you to know. Mistakes are not the end of the world. Even native speakers make grammatical slips, repeat themselves, change direction mid-sentence. What matters is not perfection. What matters is communication. One practical thing you can do right now is change your goal from sounding perfect to sounding natural. If you are trying too hard to use advanced vocabulary and complex structures, your fluency goes down. You lose your rhythm. You make more errors, not fewer. Speak at your actual level or just slightly above it. Find the balance between accuracy and fluency. And try starting each answer a little more slowly than feels natural. Begin slowly, let yourself find the flow, and then build from there. Speed can come later. Starting at a manageable pace keeps you from stumbling over yourself before you even get going. Another thing worth knowing is that natural spoken English is not the same as written English. If you have been reading model answers online, be aware that most of them are written in a formal, polished style that nobody actually speaks in. Real spoken English has restarts. It has repetition. It has moments where you change your mind halfway through a sentence and start again. That is not a mistake. That is just how people talk. So do not torture yourself trying to speak in perfect written sentences. Let it be messy in the natural human way that language actually is. Fourth tip for part 3. Speak even when you do not know the answer. This is crucial. In part 3, you will sometimes be asked about things you genuinely do not know much about. Maybe it is genetic engineering. Maybe it is cryptocurrency regulation. Maybe it is something completely out of your field. Here is the thing. The examiner is not testing your knowledge. They are testing your English. So even talking about what you do not know is valid. You could say, to be honest, I am not entirely sure what that involves. but I suppose it might be related to medicine and technology, in which case, yes, I imagine it will become increasingly important in the future. Or you could use a personal example. Say my cousin studied that at university and always said it was going to become a major field. I am not an expert myself, but based on what she told me, it seems like the future is very bright for it. Do not go silent. Do not say, "I do not know," and stop. Always say something. Even imperfect ideas expressed in solid English are better than silence. Fifth and final tip for part 3, and this one is more of a life philosophy than a test trick. Build your language over time, not overnight. A lot of students want a shortcut. They want a list of 10 words that will guarantee a band 7. They want a formula that will make it happen without the hard work, and I understand that desire. I do. But it does not work that way, and I would rather be honest with you than tell you something that sounds good but sets you up to fail. Your vocabulary, your grammar, your fluency, your confidence, all of these develop over time. Week by week, topic by topic, conversation by conversation. What you can do right now is build a system. Study vocabulary by topic and subtopic. Look at word families. Study collocations. Spend time with real English through podcasts, videos, articles. Practice speaking regularly, ideally with a timer and under test-like conditions. Research part 3 topics in depth, and do all of this consistently over weeks and months. But here is the thing that most people get wrong about how to study. They treat it like punishment. They sit down with a textbook thinking this is going to be painful but necessary. And when you approach it that way, the learning is shallow. The stress gets in the way. The information does not stick. Research consistently shows that people learn better and deeper when they are relaxed and when they are enjoying what they are doing. So instead of grinding through IELTS preparation like it is a chore, make it as engaging as possible. Find topics that genuinely interest you. Watch videos you actually enjoy. Talk about things you care about. Make the process feel less like hard work and more like fun work, because the more you enjoy it, the better you will learn, and the better you learn, the higher your score will be. You have made it to the end of this video. That alone tells me something about you. You are the kind of person who is patient, who stays focused, who keeps going even when it gets long. And that is exactly the mindset you need for IELTS speaking. It is not a quick fix. It is not a magic formula. It is consistent effort, smart preparation, and a belief in your own ability to communicate. Keep going. Keep practicing. Enjoy the journey as much as the destination. And when you walk into that test room, walk in with a quiet confidence, a gentle smile, and the knowledge that you are ready. Good luck. You have got this.